The first anonymous letter arrived with chilling precision, its words carving a fissure of fear into the quiet facade of a small American town. A life, once ordinary, was now trapped in the crosshairs of an unseen, malevolent force, and no one knew why. Our story unfolds in the mid-1970s, within Circleville, Ohio. This community was so archetypally American, it could have been plucked from a Norman Rockwell painting. Nestled in fertile plains, celebrated for its annual pumpkin show and deeply ingrained, close-knit sensibilities, Circleville epitomized the idyllic small-town life. Neighbors knew neighbors, doors were often left unlocked, and the biggest concern was usually the weather. Yet, beneath this veneer of tranquility, something dark and insidious was stirring, preparing to unravel the very fabric of peace. The first hint of this malignancy surfaced in 1976. The target, Mary Gillespie, a school bus driver, respected and, in the best possible way, unremarkable. She opened an anonymous letter. Its contents were sharp as shards of glass, accusing her of an illicit affair with a high-ranking school official. The accusations were lurid, unnervingly specific, and designed to wound. Mary, stunned and shaken, initially dismissed it as a cruel prank, but the poison had already begun to seep into her world. What followed wasn't a one-off incident, but a relentless deluge. More letters arrived, not just for Mary, but for her husband, Ron Gillespie, who was the school superintendent. These missives escalated, growing bolder and far more menacing. They threatened to expose the alleged affair to the entire small town, promising to ruin their lives. The anonymity of the sender was absolute, a chilling shield. And their knowledge of private details was deeply unnerving. Who knew enough about the Gillespies' lives to craft such specific, damaging lies? More importantly, what was their motive? The terror was not confined to Mary and Ron. Other residents of Circleville began receiving similar letters, targeting them with accusations of infidelity, financial impropriety, or various moral failings. These missives appeared as if from nowhere, hand-printed with crude, block letters, often smudged, bearing no return address. They were unsettling artifacts, physical manifestations of an unseen presence that seemed to haunt the very air of Circleville. This wasn't just a local eccentric, this was a calculated campaign of psychological warfare. The writer knew the rhythms of the town, the unspoken secrets, the vulnerabilities hidden behind respectable front doors. It was a pervasive mystery that gnawed at the edges of everyone's peace of mind. The insidious nature of the letters lay in their ability to sow distrust. They didn't just accuse, they hinted, they suggested, they injected suspicion into the veins of the community. Friendships frayed, marriages strained, and a pervasive paranoia began to take hold. Everyone looked at their neighbors with a new, guarded skepticism. Was the writer someone they knew? Someone they trusted? Or someone who just enjoyed watching their world crumble? The Gillespies were at the epicenter of this storm. Mary was explicitly instructed to stop her alleged affair or face public humiliation. Ron, initially dismissive, grew increasingly concerned as the letters became more frequent and explicitly threatening. They contained details only someone intimately familiar with their lives could know, details that made them doubt everyone around them. The police were involved, but anonymous letters are notoriously difficult to trace. Without fingerprints, without a clear witness, the investigation stalled. How do you catch a shadow when it leaves no trace? Then came the chilling escalation, a terrifying leap from private threats to public spectacle. Signs began appearing along Mary's bus route, blatant accusations painted on fence posts and road signs, visible to every passing driver, every parent, every child. "Mary Gillespie is a whore," one sign blared in bold, unmistakable letters. The writer was no longer content with whispering in the dark. They wanted the entire small town to know. They wanted Mary's humiliation to be undeniably public. The psychological toll on Mary was immense. Imagine driving a school bus, responsible for the safety of children, knowing that at any moment, you might round a bend and see your deepest fears, your most private shames, plastered for the world to see. Her world, once secure, had become a minefield. The harassment was relentless, the pressure suffocating. It felt as if the town itself was watching her, judging her, becoming an accomplice to her tormentor. By September 1977, the letters had taken an even darker turn for Ron Gillespie. One letter delivered a chilling ultimatum: expose his wife's affair, or the writer would do it for him, with devastating consequences. The letter also warned him, cryptically, about his driving. Ron, a former Marine, was not a man to be easily intimidated, but this campaign was relentless. He began carrying a gun for protection, a desperate measure born of fear and frustration, a symbol of a man pushed to his absolute limit. On September 19, 1977, Ron Gillespie's life, and the trajectory of the Circleville mystery, took a tragic, irreversible turn. After an evening spent practicing at a local firing range, Ron called Mary. He told her he believed he had finally found the identity of the letter writer. He sounded both resolute and deeply disturbed. Later that night, his truck veered off State Route 188, crashing violently into a tree. When authorities arrived, they found Ron dead at the scene. His revolver, the one he had begun carrying, lay next to him, having discharged a single bullet into his head. The official ruling was an accidental death, possibly suicide, exacerbated by alcohol found in his system. But the people of Circleville, and certainly Mary Gillespie, knew better. They knew about the letters, the threats, the escalating terror. Ron had been on his way to confront someone, convinced he had unmasked the tormentor. The timing was too convenient, the circumstances too grim to be mere accident. Was it a suicide, overwhelmed by the pressure? An accidental discharge during the chaos of a crash? Or something far more sinister, murder? The bullet wound was perplexing, suggesting a struggle or an unlikely self-inflicted wound during an impact. To Mary, it was a direct consequence of the letters, a brutal, chilling payoff to the unseen stalker's campaign. Much like the personal accounts of life in Ohio chronicled by writers exploring themes of familial relationships, loss, and displacement, the Gillespie family's ordeal became a harrowing testament to how deeply a single malicious act could shatter the fabric of a life. The bereavement was immediate, but the feeling of displacement from their former lives would linger for decades. Ron's death ignited a furious resolve in Mary. She was no longer just a victim, she was a woman on a mission to find her husband's killer and bring an end to the nightmare. The letters did not cease with Ron's death. If anything, they grew bolder, more taunting. One arrived addressed directly to her, boasting about Ron's demise and promising she was next. The audacity was shocking, confirming to Mary that the stalker was still out there, emboldened by their perceived victory, reveling in the fresh terror. Mary decided to fight fire with fire. In February 1978, she planted a decoy. On her property, she erected a sign in her front yard, ostensibly addressed to the stalker, daring them to appear. Her hope was to provoke a response, to bait the hidden enemy into revealing themselves. The stalker, ever watchful, took the bait. A phone call came to Mary, a hushed, distorted voice telling her to remove the sign. It was the break she needed. She rushed to the area where the sign had been, and there, nearby, she spotted a fresh hand-painted sign that mimicked the style of the stalker's earlier public attacks. This sign, too, was a direct message to Mary. Acting on instinct and desperation, Mary lay in wait. She drove her car to a secluded spot near where the anonymous caller said he would be. And there, in the darkness, she saw it, a truck pull up, a man step out and attempt to remove one of the newly posted anonymous signs. Mary, armed with Ron's revolver, confronted him. A tense standoff ensued. The man, startled, sped off. Mary fired a shot, hitting the truck's tire. She chased him, leading police on a high-speed pursuit that ended in Columbus, some 20 miles away. The man Mary had chased was Paul Freshour. And Paul Freshour was not a stranger. He was her brother-in-law, the husband of Ron Gillespie's sister. He was also a fellow bus driver. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. Could it be? The quiet brother-in-law, the anonymous stalker? The idea was almost too horrific to comprehend. Police quickly moved to build a case against Freshour. A .38 caliber handgun, consistent with the bullet found in Ron Gillespie's head, was recovered from Freshour's home. Crucially, the FBI's handwriting experts examined numerous samples of Freshour's writing and compared them to the anonymous letters. They concluded there were strong similarities. While not a definitive match, it was enough for a grand jury. Paul Freshour was charged with attempted murder for the shooting incident with Mary Gillespie and, later, with mailing threatening letters. The case for Ron Gillespie's death remained officially an accident or suicide, but the prevailing sentiment in the small town linked it directly to Freshour. In 1983, Paul Freshour was convicted on a single charge of mailing threatening letters and sentenced to 7 to 25 years in prison. The verdict brought a semblance of closure to Circleville, a collective sigh of relief that the tormentor had finally been unmasked. The nightmare, it seemed, was over. But in the annals of dark history, sometimes the greatest mysteries are not those that remain unsolved, but those that appear to be solved, yet continue to whisper doubts from the shadows, mocking the very idea of justice. The conviction of Paul Freshour was supposed to be the definitive end to the Circleville letter mystery. A culprit was identified, apprehended, and imprisoned. But the threads of this chilling narrative were far from neatly tied. Paul Freshour, from the moment of his arrest, maintained his innocence with unwavering conviction. He admitted to being at the scene of the sign, claiming he was there to remove a defamatory sign about himself, not to place one. The gun found in his home, he argued, was a family heirloom, and the handwriting analysis, while pointing to similarities, wasn't conclusive. And then, the impossible happened. While Paul Freshour languished in the Ohio State Penitentiary, the letters continued. Yes, the Circleville Letters, the very same sinister missives that had plagued the town for years, continued to arrive. Not just to residents of Circleville, but even one, chillingly, to Paul Freshour himself, addressed to him in prison. This fact alone ripped the fabric of the supposed solution to shreds. If Freshour was the Circleville letter writer, how could he be sending letters from inside a maximum security prison? This forensic contradiction plunged the entire case back into the murky depths of the unexplained, reigniting the core mystery. The FBI, whose initial analysis had been used in Freshour's conviction, was brought back in. This time, their findings were more nuanced. While they acknowledged some similarities in Freshour's handwriting to the anonymous letters, they stated that they could not definitively say he was the author. Furthermore, they found other potential writers whose handwriting bore even stronger resemblances. The initial certainty began to crumble under scrutiny, exposing the cracks in a seemingly solid conviction. Who, then, was writing these letters? Was there a copycat, inspired by the original stalker, picking up the torch of torment? Or was there a second, unknown individual, working in tandem with Freshour, or perhaps the true mastermind all along? The idea of a deeper conspiracy began to fester, a new layer of dread. While the broader American landscape in the 1970s and 80s was hurtling forward, embracing innovations and progress, Circleville, Ohio, found itself paradoxically dragged back into a darker, more primitive age of fear and suspicion. Progress seemed to bypass this small town, leaving it vulnerable to a terrifyingly analog threat that a high-tech society struggled to comprehend, let alone solve. The continuous arrival of the letters to Freshour in prison became the single, stark, undeniable clue that the truth remained hidden. Paul Freshour served 10 years in prison. Upon his release in 1994, he continued to vehemently proclaim his innocence, dedicating the remainder of his life to clearing his name and exposing the real Circleville letter writer. He always maintained that the real culprit was Ron Gillespie's brother, but this was never definitively proven. The letters eventually stopped, fading away as mysteriously as they had begun, leaving a final, unsettling silence. The identity of the true Circleville stalker remains, to this day, an enduring enigma. The Circleville Letters represent one of the most baffling and disturbing examples of psychological torment in American history. A small town was held hostage by an unseen enemy, its sense of security shattered, its trust in its neighbors eroded. Ronald Gillespie paid the ultimate price, leaving behind a legacy of doubt and unanswered questions. Paul Freshour lost a decade of his life, imprisoned for a crime he always claimed he didn't fully commit, a claim substantiated by the chilling detail that the letters continued to arrive during his incarceration. The motivations of the anonymous writer remain obscured by time and secrecy. Was it revenge? A twisted sense of justice? A cruel game played by a hidden sociopath who vanished into the fabric of the community? We may never truly know. The case serves as a stark reminder of the devastating power of anonymity, the fragility of truth, and how easily a community can be poisoned by fear and suspicion. The quiet streets of Circleville, Ohio, once a picture of American serenity, became the stage for a prolonged, chilling drama, where the villain was never fully unmasked, and justice remained elusive. The Circleville Letters are a testament to how profoundly a single, malicious presence can disrupt the fabric of human lives, leaving scars that may never truly heal. Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, their shadows stretching far beyond the light of justice, forever haunting the quiet corners of history. What other dark historical mysteries do you believe remain tragically unsolved, their secrets buried beneath layers of doubt and fear? Let us know in the comments below.